Hello and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live stream here on YouTube, where each week I edit subscriber submitted images to demonstrate techniques and tips to help you with your photo editing. This week, our theme is forest once again. We did forest a couple of months ago, and there's a ton of images in my archive that you've already submitted. So we're going to run this one again to use up some of the images that I've already got. Before I dig into what we're doing this week, I just want to make mention that we are changing our time. So make sure that I got to switch over to Chrome here. Let me get out of this one. Here we go. Make sure that you make note, and on our YouTube stream or on our YouTube channel under the community tab, I'll put it in the chat. You can find any notices. So if we're ever going to be rescheduling or something comes up, also you'll find polls and surveys, the notes there. So the new time and date will start after this one. So this is our last Wednesday one until spring. The next one after today will be October the 15th, which is Sunday here in North America, and it may be early morning in Australia. Okay, so make sure that you change your calendar notifications and make sure you hit the bell on our YouTube channel for notifications from YouTube. All right. Okay, so these are the forest images, and I'm just going to check and see. We've got all of our regulars. We got Mickey, Brandon, nice to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Marguerite, Debbie, Trish. So Trish, did you note the new time? And we tried to pick a time that was going to work for you as well. It might be super early there, but it's going to be late at night Europe time, and it should be Rob has said 7 a.m. Melbourne time, Melbourne, and 9 a.m. in Auckland. So hopefully that works for you as well. Okay, so let's get started. Any questions before I dig in here about the time change or anything else? As I'm going along, I'm always open to questions, of course. And usually things come up as we start editing. So I've got several different images to work with in both Lightroom and Lightroom and Luminar. So let me just take a look through. This is actually one that I used for the image this week, and this one was from, I'm not sure who this was from. It does not have a name. F. So if that's your image, I did a little bit of editing on this one, but unfortunately it was a JPEG, so I had some limitations on it. Let me show you the original just to give you an idea. So basically all I did was I brightened it up, and I changed the camera profile to actually vintage, which was one of these ones down here. I wanted it kind of to have more of an orangey feel, but you could play around with different ones in here. So mostly what I did was I lightened it up, right? So I'm not going to redo this one because there's not a lot I can do here with the limitation of the JPEG. Let's take a look at what else we've got. We've got some nice path things. Got some berries. This one from Danelle. Well, that's an interesting tree. We could certainly bring out some texture in that, in this old log. Right? So images like this of a forest, ooh, that's really lovely as well. Images like this of a forest, you want to be able to bring out the subject. Okay, so you have to decide, first of all, what is the subject? And when there's a lot going on, something like this, where do you want the viewer to go, right? So think about that when you're taking the pictures as well. And one of the things that I'm going to mention now is our next one is going to be about cropping, actually. So we're going to do an entire session all about cropping, why to crop, not so much how, but why and how much and what's the importance of cropping, both in camera and in processing. So I'm going to use images that I've already got. No need to submit any new ones. Sorry, I had to mute myself while I sneezed there. Okay, so let me pick an image here. I like this waterfall of Stephanie's, but this one of Danelle's has more sort of challenges. So let's start with this one. Okay, so the challenge here is the exposure is good, right? We can look at the histogram and we can see that, oops, didn't turn my mouse on. We can see that the exposure is good, but where does your eye go? Okay, so let's use my little upside down trick to look at this image. And you guys tell me tell me in the chat, where do your eyes go? What do you look at when this image is upside down, right? For me, my eyes are going to the brightest parts of the sky and this part of the path up here, okay? So the tricky part is, though, there's nothing on the path, right? So if you're going to photograph pathways or anything that has like a leading line, make sure that you have something on the path, right? Let's come back here. Okay, so what did you guys see? Where's your eye going here on this one? Did you agree with me? The sky and the path? Everybody's sleeping today. Where do your eyes go, Rob? Tell me. So I'm going to turn it right side up, okay? And my goal is to bring some attention where I want it. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that there's kind of a path here. It looks like maybe a little turnaround at the end of the path. And it's really bright here in this area, okay? So now I'm getting some comments. Okay, open space at the top, sky, sky, path, sky, sky, open space at the top, okay? So do we want them looking up here? Probably not so much, right? If this is about the path and the forest, we want to keep the eye in here, okay? So let's do our usual camera profile first. Ooh, landscape actually does a really nice job there. Okay, so I'm going to do camera profile. That's a Canon one. Okay, so look at that. Immediately, the sky is bluer and the trees are greener. Okay, I'm going to bring the shadows up to try and lighten that forest a little bit. That helps this area. Okay, and I'm going to bring the highlights down. You know, what's happening with the sky is we got some kind of a weird, I don't know if that's a cloud or something in the background, but the blue is gone excessively blue, okay? So we want to make sure to take control of that, and I'm going to do that with the color tool and just bring the saturation of the blue down. Okay? We can darken the sky, right? Make sure, again, you don't go overboard. We can darken the sky, keep the saturation under control. Let's zoom in a little bit. And I think there's some chromatic aberration or something going on here, because I'm just going to zoom in to 100%. Yeah, can you see the purple fringe? So I'm seeing a lot of purple in the sky, and I had a thought that this might be chromatic aberration, but you can still see, even after this button is checked off, there's still some purple there. So go over to the manual section of lens corrections, use the eyedropper, and then just find that purple. See that? Find that purple and click on it, and you can see the adjustments were made here, and now the purple is gone. Okay, so fixing that chromatic aberration. It looks like there's mountains in the background here, and then there's these white bits of the clouds. So I'm not sure why it's like super white, but let's see how it plays out. I could do a mask on the sky, and let's see what it selects. Okay, if I so it's not even selecting that white bit. Okay, so even if I select sky, it's not getting that white bit, which is kind of what I suspected, actually. So instead, I'm going to do luminance range, and I'm going to zoom in here to just pick this white area. Okay, and of course, it's picking up other areas as well. I'm going to change my overlay mask to red so I can see it better. So I just want the white bit up here. Okay, so what is the best way? Okay, I want you guys to tell me, what is the best way for me to just get these white spots up here? And right now I'm getting white spots all over the place. Any ideas? Okay, so I want to refine the mask, and I'm going to do that by using intersect. Okay, so remember, intersect means it must match this criteria and this criteria. So I've already got it matching a certain luminance range. Now I want it to match something else. And I'm going to use radial gradient because I can just simply draw a circle over that bit. Okay, and if I want to include more, I can just make the circle bigger. Right, so if I want to include these bits here, right, now I've got that selected, right, and it should just give me the bright bits inside that range. Right, I can refine the luminance range a little bit more as well. Oh, sorry, I need a cough drop. We got some here. Give me a second. Cannot disturb the sleeping cat on my desk. Talked about that earlier. She's on the chair over here. Okay, now I still want to refine it a little bit more. Okay, but I'm going to bring the highlights down. Yeah, see, it's still not getting that. It's not getting that part that I want. So I don't want the blue. Let's try subtracting the color range. Let's try subtracting blue. Okay, that's better. Okay, but it's still only getting parts of the white areas. So I'm just going to have to be conscious of going too far with that area. I might end up cropping it as well. So I've tried a few different things to darken this sky bit. Let's just try a regular vignette. That's going to help as well. And let's brighten the whole thing. So now we're doing that dance of the retouching, right? Editing dance. So I've darkened the sky and now I'm brightening everything else. Let's do our shift double click. Well, that went real far. Let's bring that back down. There's something going on here that's keeping the whites from being pure white. But now that we've brightened everything, that sky seems to be less obnoxious, right? I'm just going to remove this mask, actually. Okay, so just brightening up the whole image helps enormously, right? Now, if I want the eye to come down here, the easiest way to do that, I'm going to add a little bit of clarity, is just another mask with a radial gradient. I use radial gradients a lot to make off-center vignettes, okay? So I'm going to use this area here as the sort of base of the subject, invert it, and then just darken the outer bits. Okay, I'm still getting that crazy blue in the sky, so let's just desaturate a little bit. Like so. Okay, we're getting closer. Okay, so see how that middle part of the image is brightening up? Do before after a lot, okay? I want to darken this area over here, okay? So I'm going to do another radial gradient in this area. And I'm just going to bring the highlights down because it's super bright here, okay? I might even do an intersect, so I'm getting just this bright tones. I don't want to darken the mid-tones. Let's see what this one is doing. See that? So I've targeted the path. So I did that with a combination of radial gradient and luminance gradient. So this is the path. Okay. Something like that. Right, now we could get really dramatic. I would probably take this one to Luminar to do some finishing, do a mystical, and maybe even put a sun rays in to solve this part in the sky. So let's give that a try. I really want like a man and his dog or something walking on the path, right? Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it directly to Luminar, okay, because I'm not doing anything else. I'm just going to do the sky and the finishing touches, okay, the sun rays. Rob has a question. Rob wants for you guys to ask me this because I've been editing a lot of photos this week. A lot of photos this week. Okay, here's my Luminar open on my other screen. So let me just bring it over here. We could try some presets, but I have an idea already what I want to do in my head. Okay, so I'm going to jump directly to the sun rays, drag it up, and then place it. So I'm going to have it coming from somewhere over here in that bright area, because then it will just kind of make sense that that area is bright, right? I want to warm it up a little bit. And then I use the randomizer a lot because I want it to kind of seem like it's shining down on this area here through the trees. Maybe a little bit less rays. And the placement is important as well because when you change the placement, it's like it's coming through the leaves and the sticks there. Okay. Actually, that's not bad. I want more down than up. Okay. And I can even mask it. Let's just keep trying. So I just do random. Let me do a little more like so. So the overall look, I want it brighter. And let's make the sun rays a little bit longer. Like so. Okay, here we go again. So I just click over the randomizer. That's not bad. And I'm going to do a mask to bring it off the top of the image. So I'm going to go from here so that it fades out up there a little bit. Okay, see how it's not just coming down? But it kind of makes that bright area make sense, right? Now, we would have more shadows if the sun was coming from there, right? So I kind of want to keep it really soft. So I'm just going to dial it back ever so slightly. Okay. How's that? And then let's go with a, I was looking for mystical. I took it out of my favorites because I was doing a video. But let's try atmosphere. I don't use fog a lot, but let's just see what happens if we add some fog, down here or something. Where is it? Yeah, so it's coming from the top. I wish I could move the fog around. It's not my favorite tool, to be honest, but that's kind of interesting. I like it happening down here a bit more, because it's brightening the forest a bit. So what if we just make it gentler? See that? It's lowering the contrast. Okay. And let's try a mystical. Again, I was looking for it up top. I'm used to looking for it in my favorites. And it's right here. I usually like it at about 25 to 30. Okay. Let's just go further. Ooh. Taking it further, actually. I like that. I usually don't go that far, but I kind of like that. It's giving this really sort of, like a better term, mystical effect, right? So let's see what we've got before Luminar and after. I really like that, right? So see how just these little finishing touches work well, right? If we wanted to apply a lot, we could also. One that I use a lot is actually the sepia one. And I bring it up so that it's just subtle, adding a little bit of brown. Okay. That helps to minimize some of that oversaturated blue in the sky. See that? And in fact, we could just mask it with a linear gradient so it doesn't apply so much down below. Okay, so remember the corner that you drag it from and where the red applies is where the effect is going to go. Okay. So it's just actually solving that blue issue. I like that much better. Okay. The blue is also overpowering because your eye goes to bright colors, right? Now it feels much more like a serene forest scene, right? Let's take a look. If I do a copy, a virtual copy, and let me just reset this one. There we go. Okay, so now we can do a full before and after. Okay, so the left one is the original, unedited. Middle one is after Lightroom, and the right one is after Luminar. Okay? So that softening and the sun rays and that sepia filter, Sepia Lot did a really nice job on this one. Nobody has asked, so I'm going to tell you. Rob, how many hours have I spent? How many do you think I've spent editing photos this week? I photographed an event on Saturday and processed. I went through 550 pictures and processed 250 of them for presentation to the event organizer, and also finished up the wrestlers' photos and one of the group photos that I done, a group portrait. So I did quite a bit of editing this week. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's see what we can work on in Luminar directly. I've been liking these little mushrooms for a while, so I want to go and work on these mushrooms. I forget who sent these. These were Robert. Okay. I do have a couple of your images, Mickey, and I just wanted to address these here. So I believe they're NEF files. So they're Nikon files, okay? And I did try to do some editing on here. And my challenge was that they were just really, really green. I tried to bring out some, let's just try camera standard. I tried to bring out some detail, but look at the histogram, okay? So it's really underexposed. So Rob, if you could please share the link on what to do when your snow is gray, and that one talks about the histogram, because when you have this much space on the right of your histogram, it means that there's room to move that way in terms of exposure. So this means that this image is underexposed probably by 2 stops, okay? I'm going to come back here. So I can attempt to try and recover some of the detail, but because it was so underexposed, I had a lot of challenges with that, and it came out really green. I had trouble trying to even just make it not super green. I've tried different presets, adding a bunch of magenta. That's closer, right? So check your camera settings. You may have a custom white balance dialed in that's adding a lot of green, right? And even after adjusting the exposure, are you seeing a subject here? Okay, so where do you want us to look? So that's one thing that I want you to think about, Mickey, is when you're taking the photo, what is it that grabbed your attention? Where do you want us to look? And a lot of times you simply just need to get closer, but this is something that we'll talk about when we do the cropping, but you need to have something as a focal point in your scene for the eyes to land on. I talked about that with the one with the path. Okay, this one applies as well. Same kind of idea, okay? You need to have something for the eye to land on, and right now there's just a lot of busy stuff and nothing for me to land on, okay? I tried the same with this one. I'm actually just going to copy the settings and paste it into this one. So I brightened this one up. I did the same settings to develop, and you could see that it's quite a bit underexposed as well, right? So you really, really have to look at what you're exposing for when you're shooting. Okay. This one here, again, another path. I really want something on this path for my eye to go towards. Right now, my eye goes to this concrete or this sidewalk and this thing at the end here, but there's nothing that grabs my attention actually in the forest. So concentrate on that. Nice to see you, Nancy, only for a few minutes. We'll see you next time. Okay, so work on that. So let's get back to our mushrooms here. Okay, so let's go with this one. So these guys are really, really kind of cute. I like these ones. We got a nice exposure. Okay, so what this histogram tells us is that it's just flat. It's a little bit flat. Okay, so we're going to do some magic. Now it says that it's not a raw file. Let me just check that. Ah, it's a TIFF. Okay, so it's a TIFF file. That's the file that he sent me, and it's not being recognized as a raw file. Okay, can you see that? So even though it's a TIFF file and it's probably 16-bit, if it was exported from the original raw file, I don't have the original raw data, which means there are no camera profiles, and also under the white balance, there's no presets. Okay, so you lose some benefits if you send me a TIFF file. Make sure that you send me the raw file. Okay, let me go back here. So we'll work on this regardless because it's got a good exposure and we can make it work. Now, there's no shift double click trick in Luminar. It doesn't work the same as it does in Lightroom. So what you need to do is just turn on the clipping warnings by pressing the J key. Rob, I'm going to get you to share the link for the Luminar Neo keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet, please. Once the clipping warnings are turned on, now you can pull in on either the curve. I'm pulling the blacks in. And you can start to see wherever you see these blue highlights, that is the blacks clipping, right? But I want to show you something, okay? So I'm going to turn the clipping warnings off. Watch the color of this image as I add more black. Can you see that? So this was pretty blah and flat, right? This one really shows what happens when you add black, right? So just that little bit. Right, it's clipping a little bit in the shadows, which is what I want, but it's doing a great job on adding the color. Okay, I'm going to bring the highlights down to take care of that clipping on the mushroom right here. Okay, see that? Watch the mushroom just until it's gone, and I'm going to brighten the whole thing a little bit. Okay, now that I've brightened the whole thing a little bit, I need the highlights down a little more. And I'm going to go a little more black. This time, I'm going to use the black slider. The difference between using the curve and the black slider is the curve goes a lot farther. Okay? If I go all the way with the black slider, I get something that looks like that. If I go further with the curve, I get completely black. Okay? So you can go a lot farther with the curve. Okay? It's neither good nor bad. It's just for you to know about. Okay, so there we go, before and after, and all we've done is these few options here. Okay, do I want to adjust the color? Maybe make it a little bit warmer, a little bit less pink, maybe, and even a little less vibrant. Okay. Like so. Also, under optics, when you don't have a raw file, you don't get the chromatic aberration checkbox either. So make sure that you are sending a raw file and working on a raw file. So there's our first basic adjustment. Okay, now let's talk about cropping while we're here. Okay, this could be a good example for the next one. But what do you see? The bottom third of the image is all sort of this grass that's in the foreground, and then the right third is all grass and blank as well. So the subject is literally only taking up this little section here. Now, space around the subject is a good thing. But let's just see what Luminar suggests as composition AI. I usually find I have to move it around once it does its thing, but in this case, I agree with it 100%, and I might even come in a little bit more. When you have a lot of foreground or space in front of the subject, it makes it feel much farther away. I feel like maybe it's tilting as well. It's hard to tell because the mushrooms could be growing crooked, but let's go with something like that. Okay. See how they just came closer once I hit enter? Much better, right? All right. Now I'm going to use a vignette, which I do on almost every image. I'm just going to drag it down and do my little trick of feather down. You know, remember what's happened. We've cropped it, right? So the original image is where the vignette outside is. And again, they still haven't fixed this in Luminar, so I'm still waiting for that. So we've got to make it smaller and then just recenter the vignette over the mushrooms. Okay. We could go even smaller. So now we're getting closer. Once I get it positioned, then I put the feather back up and adjust the amount. See what a difference that makes? Now I think I'd like to add some structure to the actual mushrooms and maybe blur the background a little bit more, right? So there's structure. Now I had a great question actually from one of my readers. I'm just going to come back on screen here. I had a great question by email, and that was, there are many different ways to do sharpening and increase detail in Luminar, including the sharpen slider in raw, or in develop, the sharpen slider in develop, the details panel, the structure panel, and then of course sharpen AI, the super sharp extension. Okay, so let's see the difference. Okay, so I'm starting with structure here, and I'm going to bring this all the way up just so that you can see what it's doing. I find that structure is most like clarity in Luminar or in Lightroom or Facebook. Or clarity, this structure slider is mostly like clarity in Lightroom. Get my brain working. Okay. What it's doing is it's looking for the edges of objects and between dark and light and enhancing them. Perfect example is this little stick in the background here, because it's increasing the contrast there. Okay. So I don't want that happening anywhere except on the mushrooms. So I'm going to go mask, and I could try auto masking, but in this case, I just want to brush it over the mushrooms. So I'm going to get a brush that's about this size, about 70% strength, and I'm just going to paint over the tops of the mushrooms. Now this one is a little bit out of focus, so I might even just leave that one. Let's get the stems and this one over here too. Okay, so can you see what that's doing? Once I've got it painted in, see I went over the grass too much, so I'm going to fix my mask here. I don't want the grass. That's better. Once I've got it masked, then I dial the tool back. So I bring the sliders up high, mask, and then adjust to my taste, okay? Because it's easier to see where you're masking when the tool is applied really strong. Okay. While I'm here, I'm going to copy this mask, okay? And then I'm going to add some blur. I'm going to do destructure. So the opposite of plus structure is sort of this blurriness, right? So let's paste in this mask and then do opposite, because I want to blur everything else, okay? And then I'm going to dial it back, obviously. Okay, so I do not want that much, just ever so slightly. So it's just taking away sort of some details. See what it's doing in the background? But I want it to apply on the grass as well. So if we zoom in a little bit, see how it's just blurring a little bit and it's taking away some details, because you want your eye to go to the part with the most detail, right? If we go to the next tool, couple down, is the details panel. Now I'm going to take these all up to the top again. Okay, so small details is looking for exactly that. So it's going to find hair, even grain as well. So you'll notice that it's starting to pick up noise. Okay. Medium details is going to be more like this kind of area of detail. And then large detail is areas of large blocks of space. Okay. So I'm bringing all of those up to the max. Okay. And then I'm going to paste the mask in. So we're only going to have it on the mushrooms. And then once again, dial it back to my liking. So I usually like to go higher on medium details, keep low details under 10. Let's see what it's doing. So look at the mushroom top. See how it's bringing out more texture in them? Okay. So it does it in a different way than structure does, because you have more control here over which part of your image is being sharpened and enhanced details. Okay. Now I'm going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to go with the blur. Actually, before I do that, let's try super sharp. Okay. I'm not a super fan of this tool. I find it's a bit hit and miss, but let's just try universal and low. Okay, so it's going to analyze the image and add some sharpening. And I did mention that one mushroom is a little bit out of focus. So let's see if it manages to sharpen that one mushroom. Okay. Actually, surprised myself. It's actually pretty good. Okay, so let's see. I'm looking at this one, right? It's actually doing a really good job. So I'm going to do the same thing again and paste that mask in. And I might paint in a little more because I don't think I got it all. So I'm going to get the edge of this mushroom. Make sure I get it all. There we go. Okay, can you see what that's doing? So far we've enhanced the color and the sharpness, the contrast, and the cropping. Now I'm going to go to the blur tool and do the opposite. Okay, so there's a few different ways that you can add blur. We could go with a Gaussian blur in the background. We could go with a motion blur in the background, which might be neat, and have it sort of going up. So let's try that. Let's do a motion blur. When you bring the amount up, now it's going side to side. Let's change the angle. Okay, now it's going up and down. We're going to paste the mask in. Now, of course, the mushrooms are blurred, so we need to invert the mask. Right? We need to do a little more masking on this because that's too much blurring, obviously. So I need to erase it a little bit more. So let's get a little more around the mushrooms sharp. Okay, you want to get the tops of the mushrooms and the base as well. So the grass that it's sitting on. And let's get this grass in the middle too. Something like that. Let's actually go all the way to the edge here. So it's blurring the bottom and the top. I kind of think I want to just blur the top. So I'm going to remove it from here. See that? Okay. Let's get some blur happening in there. So it kind of solves a few problems of the distracting background in an easy way. Okay. See that? So before and after. I would do a much better job of painting this in. I would get closer here. Let me get my brush. Oh, I've lost my brush again. I keep making my brush not be visible, and I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. But I would make sure that my painting is much better. And I could also deal with this leaf here a little bit too. But that's kind of a neat way of dealing with the background. And remember, we can always dial it back a little bit. We don't have to go quite so far. Or we can try Gaussian. You decide. We could also try tilt shift. Okay. Actually, let's try Gaussian and just leave it low. Let's do that. And then I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try blur again. And let's try tilt shift because it makes that sort of miniature look, right? But we can place the blur center. So we want it on the mushrooms and then adjust what parts of the image are sharp. Okay? So let's do something like that. It's kind of neat, actually. It's a little too sharp. Okay, so see how this edge, I need my fade wider. There we go. So if your fade is too quick, the blur looks too fake. I mean, of course it is, right? But that's actually kind of neat, right? And we can just dial the amount back a little bit. Now look at that, okay? That's actually working really well to minimize that foreground, right? All right. We still need to deal with these bright things in the background. I would do the erase tool to get rid of these guys, right? Where's my erase tool? There it is. Remember to zoom in. This image is a little bit smaller, so I want to zoom into 200% here. But remember to do zoom in and then just do parts of the image, right? So I'm not happy with that. Let's just clear that and do a smaller part. Okay, so do a little bit at a time. And we might find that the clone tool works better on this. Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to use the clone tool instead. Okay. And I'm going to clone with about 25%. Usually the clone tool, I leave a lower opacity, right? And I want my brush just slightly bigger than the thing I'm cloning. Why my brush is not showing me, I don't know. So there we go. So I'm just going to clone in. And then I come from the other side and I set a new cloning point. So I'm constantly changing where I'm cloning from. I have my finger on the Alt Option key, and that sets the, oh, my mouse is back. So see where I'm painting? I have my finger on the Alt Option key, so when I click it and hold it down, it sets me a new source point, right? So I'm going from this side, cloning from the right, and then I'm cloning from the left. And I'm going to get a not quite so soft brush because as I come close to the edge here, I need the edge to be sharper, right? So I'm just trying to minimize this stick thing, right? And the more you could come from different directions, it will minimize looking fake. You'll get less repeating patterns, right? So it's not perfect, but it's better. See that? Like so. And I'll probably do this one as well. So I'm constantly changing where I'm cloning from. Now the trick with the cloning tool is apply it, and then if you're happy with what you've done, close it and then reopen it again, because then you won't lose what you've got there if you end up having to remove it. Okay, I would come in a lot closer and deal with this edge here, but in the essence of time, we've got before and after. Okay, so that blur tool with the tilt shift did a really nice job blurring this foreground. Okay. Would I attempt to move the two right objects? The ones that I just did? Is that those ones, Sheila? Okay, question about the blur tool. I get lots of questions about which tools are included with what package you have, okay? If you have a lifetime license that you bought last year or whenever it came out, okay? If you bought the lifetime license, you do not get these updates, okay? So it means that you will not get, you can update your computer to version 1 or your Luminar to 1.14. Let's just see if there's any updates here. Should tell me that I'm up to date. Okay, so 1.14 up to date. It's supposed to zoom in for me. It doesn't do that. If you are up to date and you still don't see the blur tool or the studio lighting tool or the neon and glow tool, which I'm working on a video for right now that should be out later this week. If you don't see those, okay, they're tools, they're not extensions, and they are all in here in the side of the creative section. So blur is here, actually studio lights under portrait, and the neon glow is here. Okay, so 2 under creative, 1 under portrait. If you don't see them, okay, check what version you have. To get to your account, there's an account option at the top of Luminar. Just click it and it will take you to your web browser, and it's going to ask me to log in. Okay, so you have to log in, and then once you log in, you're now logged in on the Skylum website. Okay, you'll be able to see what kind of license you have, okay, and whether or not you have any extensions that you've purchased. Okay, so you could see that I have a subscription that expires in 10 years. Okay, that's because Skylum gives me the subscription because I am an ambassador, right? But if you have a subscription, it will say subscription here. If you have lifetime membership, it will say that, right? So if you have a lifetime membership and you do not have those tools and you want them, you need to buy what's called the Creative Pass, right? Make sure that I'm going to find my, let me see, where's my thing here? Make sure that you use our code DPM10 to get 10% off. If I gotta find it here, where are we? I got a little thing to put on my screen. I'm just not finding it. Nope. Do you have the discount thing handy, Rob? If you enter DPM10 when you check out, whether or not you upgrade to the subscription or you buy the Creative Pass, which I believe is $49 right now. So you'll get 10% off using our discount code. Let me see. Here we go. I found it. Okay, here is there we go. Use that code when you check out. All right. Moving on. I think I have time for one more. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter today. We are going to be away next week, so that's why we moved the time. And we got a lot going on as well. So let's do one back in Lightroom again. So we did the little mushrooms. Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, yes. We could do, where's that one of Stephanie's that I liked? The waterfall. Now, we've done lots of waterfall photos. Let's take a vote. Let's take a vote. Who wants to see the waterfall and who wants to see the stump? What I would do with either of them. To be honest, the waterfall doesn't need a lot done to it. I think maybe I've edited that one already, but it doesn't need a lot of work. So do you have a survey? Which one do you guys want to do? Waterfall, one vote for waterfall, the stump. And I noticed Karina Lynn, is this your first time joining us? If so, welcome. So far I got 3 stumps, 4 stumps, and a waterfall. Any more votes? Rob, what's your vote? Looks like the stump. I think we've done lots of waterfalls, right? So stump is different. Okay, let's do that. Okay. So if you are new, Karina, Lynn, how did you find us? I'd love to know how you heard about the live stream. Okay, so we're doing the stump. Make sure everybody gives this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, please. And also, you know, if you are a regular watcher, we know you've probably already done this, but share the videos. This video will be available for watching after we turn off the live. It's there on the channel under the live tab, and all of our other Luminar, Lightroom, Photoshop videos are there on the channel as well. So please, please feel free to share until your heart's desire. share away. Okay. All right, the stump. Okay, I'm stumped. Couldn't help myself. All right, it is a Canon file that Danelle sent, and right off the bat, when I look at this, my first instinct is to go black and white with it. Partly because it's almost monochrome as it is, right? Like there's very little color. Just to give you an idea of what it would look like, right? So this is not the best way to do black and white. But if you would just want a quick preview, you can turn the saturation down, or you can just click black and white right here just to see. So my first thought was I'm immediately going to go black and white. Okay, so if that's the case, I'm not going to spend a lot of time futzing around with correcting the color or any of that stuff. Okay, so if I want to do a camera profile, sometimes there are camera profiles that come in monochromatic. The thing you need to watch out for, though, is when you choose one like that, you'll notice that the black and white panel is grayed out. Okay, so if you're going to go monochrome, I recommend sticking with the Adobe one. Okay, so go to Adobe Monochrome. Okay, then you still have the black and white available. Or if you want to go into some of the vintage ones, right, then we're getting into sort of like faded color and so on. Okay, so these are kind of those are kind of neat too. But my first thought was full black and white. So that's what I'm going to do. So make sure you choose Adobe Monochrome, right? Not a camera one. Because if you choose a camera one, you don't have the options here. And you'll see quickly when I go to this black and white panel, there's color sliders. If you've never used these before, right, what the color sliders do, I'm just going to click auto. Actually, I'll do that. What the color sliders do is they allow you to adjust the brightness of what was the original color in the image. Now I grabbed yellow because I knew there was some yellow and orange in the tree. Okay. Same thing here. Orange darkens the grass or the foreground. Okay, so that's a good thing. So I might darken orange. Brighten yellow brightens both the foreground and the background, so I don't necessarily want to do that. Let's see what green does. Green is picking up some background. And let's see, red. Red's not doing a whole lot, as I would expect. So there's not a lot of other colors in here, okay? So just pay attention to what these sliders are doing. When you're dealing with a different image that has more colors, especially, let me just do an example here. Especially one that has yellow and green, for example, like this one. Okay, so when you're dealing with greens, I'm just going to update this. Let's go monochrome. When you're dealing with greens like this, you'll notice that the leaves, yes, do have a lot of green, but there's also a lot of yellow, okay? And so getting different tones in black and white, I do that same trick that I do in color. I'll increase the brightness of yellow and darken green. Okay, so see how that changes the tones. Okay, so that's just straight out of the gate, and that's with the tones adjusted. So that's why you want to have those black and white sliders. Okay. All right, so continuing on with this one, let's go back up to basic and do the white, shift double click, and blacks. Okay. I'm going to add some more black. The thing with black and white is you want lots of contrast. You want blacks clipping. Okay, so I'm using the Alt Option key to see the clippings. Okay. I want to add a tiny bit of clarity overall, but not too much because I want to focus it on the log only. Okay. Highlights does a nice job, but I don't want to darken the log too much. So I may just bring that down a tiny bit and stop there. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I've got some presets that I made, and the images that I just talked about, where I was editing for an event, these presets come in handy. So I've made one that lightens the subject and darkens the background. Okay, you can see when I hover over it what it does. Okay, in this case it blurs as well. I've also created one to just mask the subject and the background, and it's just a shortcut. Okay, so all that really does is creates two masks but no adjustments. Okay, so if I want to do something different, it allows me to work on it, and it's done a really good job of picking out that log. Now I'm going to push up the clarity and the texture on the log. Okay, let's zoom in. See how it's picking up that sharpness? I'm going to add some blacks and push the whites as well. So we've got some really nice contrast happening in the subject. In the background, this is where I want to bring the highlights down. So now I'm going to bring the highlights down, which is going to darken that foreground. See that? Without overall. So when you do global adjustments, it affects everything, and I didn't want the highlights coming down on the log. Okay, so we're doing a local adjustment. This is called a local adjustment. It only applies on certain areas. Okay, lots of black clipping. I don't think I need any more black clipping. See what a nice job that's doing. Okay, if we look at before and after the masks. And I'm going to do an edge vignette using a preset. I've got one that's called medium. And now that I've done all that, I'm just going to check to make sure, am I clipping anything? Yes, I am. So I'm going to dial a few things back. Maybe a little bit on the shadows as well. Something like that. Okay, so now you can see the difference. I might even come back in here and darken the orange a little bit more. There we go. See the difference? I still want this bottom darker, so I'm going to add another mask using a linear gradient. That's the easiest way to come from the edge. Just like that. And just exposure. Exposure and black. Black really enhances the shadows, so it's a great idea to add black. Now look what we got, right? Kind of want to darken this area too. So I'm going to add a radial gradient to the one that I'm already adding and just add this section in here. Just get the edge. There we go. Okay, so before and after. I love this sort of, detailed cragginess of this log. I feel like I want to crop it a little bit because it's right in the middle. I'm going to come in a little bit from the bottom again and the right. Yeah. So I got the log leading you in from here. And everything is dark, leading you right into that center. I like it. Right? Now, if we want to add some color toning, like doing a sepia tone or something like that, we can use the color grading tool. Okay. And I want to show this in both Luminar and Lightroom. So let me do the Lightroom one first. So to add it in Lightroom, I'm going to choose a yellowish tone and just increase the shadows and the saturation. So I'm on the shadows in the color grading tool. Okay. So I'm only adding it to the shadows. Okay. So my hue, make note, is 46. If I want something, a bit more yellowish. We could go a little more. Let's go 59. Okay. I like to keep the whites or the highlights clean, but if you want it to match, just make note of the hue color, go to highlights, and enter the same number. We said it was 59, and then just bring the saturation up. See the difference? So white highlights, yellow highlights, and that's just a preference. I think in this one, actually, it works well with the yellow highlights. Okay? I really like brown tones like this. It just makes the wood feel more like wood, right? So it's more of a sepia tone. So that's it for that one. That's all I would do. Nice and simple. If I want to do the same image in Luminar, let me just find the log. Okay. Okay, so develop, and we can choose, see, camera monochrome, but if we do that, that's not the best way again. So if I choose camera monochrome, and then we go to the black and white, right, it already thinks it's not black and white, okay? So if I convert it to black and white, see, it doesn't affect any of the colors, okay? So I'm just gonna undo all of that. So don't use develop raw to go black and white. Okay. So remember what we did here? I just increased the brightness a little bit like this. Make sure the highlights aren't clipping. And then we did some local adjustments. Okay. And we go black and white. So now if I convert to black and white, you can see that I'm adjusting the tones, right? I'm not going to do all the same work on this one again, but I just want to show you how to get the sepia tone. Okay, so that is under Creative Tools. Oops, toning. Okay, so it was color grading in Lightroom, and it is toning in Luminar. Okay, so once again, we do the shadows, bring the saturation up, and choose a hue. Somewhere in the orange to yellow range is a nice sepia tone. Okay. And if you want the highlights, remember, just make note of the hue number and dial up the same number. It's 53 in this case. Something like that. Okay. This one is screaming for a vignette. I can't help myself. Can't help myself. There we go. This one would also be screaming for things like structure, right? I would mask it directly onto the log again, just like I did with the mushrooms, okay? So I would apply structure to the log and minus structure or blur to the background and possibly even the foreground, right? Any questions? That was kind of a fun, quick one. Rob is sending me a note here. Okay, noted. All right, so I think we're good for forest today. We've wandered through the forest. We've picked some mushrooms. We've seen a waterfall. We've got an old stump. And what else did we do? What else did we do? The first one I did, oh yes, the path, right? So lots of great forest images tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Reminder, we are going to be back October 15th. New time, 4 hours earlier than you're used to seeing us. So make sure that you join us. You don't have to submit any images for next time. But if you do want to submit some images for future consideration, we'll have some new themes coming up. Rob and I have about a 12-hour drive to our destination in British Columbia next week. So we're going to be coming up with new ideas and brainstorming along the way. But we're going to be doing cropping. So make note that if you are logging in or watching from Facebook, we can't see your name. Okay, so if this is you, come over to YouTube, go to our live stream on YouTube, and then your name will show up once you join in from YouTube. All right, so can't identify you, but thanks for joining, and I hope you join us as well. Take care, and we'll see you on the 15th.